Good morning, friends. We're right back at you here at Straightforward Therapeutics. We are talking about hope for the troubled mind. And the last couple of sessions, we've been talking about depression and just developing hope in our life and what the Bible says about it. But today, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to start launching into some sessions about anxiety. And what is anxiety really? I remember one time I was working at a counseling agency. Actually, I did a lot of domestic violence counseling and substance abuse counseling. There was a psychologist there. I believe his name was Mark, Dr. Mark. And we were talking one day about addiction. And he said, the root of addiction is really anxiety. Now, when I think about anxiety, I think about being, jittery, hyperventilating, having a panic attack, etc. And I was like, well, maybe for some people, but, and he said, no, for everyone. And I was like, nah, kind of like sketchy on that one. And he said, well, think about it. What is anxiety really? Anxiety is an uneasy feeling, And when you think about being bored or stressed or lonely, or feeling rejected or whatever, all of these are uneasy feelings, and so a lot of times people do utilize self-gratification through substance abuse or other means in order to address those uneasy feelings, right? And so I was thinking today about how that your feelings drive your thinking. It's not good for feelings to drive your thinking because emotions are really lousy leaders, as I've mentioned previously. And so when we let our emotions drive our thoughts, usually our thoughts are going to run amok and we're going to be acting. Our behavior is going to be following the pattern of that skewed thinking, which is being pushed by these emotions. And so oftentimes we make poor choices, and we are basing them on a foundation that is really shaky. Emotions come about by a number of ways, and if I could paint a picture today of your life, yourself, your body, your personage. Okay, let's call it that. Your personage. Let's say that your personage is a house. Okay, and I live in a house, a 2-story house that's got several doors and a lot of windows. My wife loves light and windows, and we put probably 20-something windows in our house when we built it. And we live in the middle of 40 acres in a patch of woods, and I don't think we've got curtains on hardly any window in our house because we live out in the middle of the woods. And so the only thing that sees us is deer and raccoons and what have you. And but we have a lot of windows and we have a few doors, okay? And this thought came to me today as I was preparing for this session is, where do those thoughts come from that create the feelings that we're struggling with? And I thought about, the back door. Now, when I think about the back door, I'm thinking about things that are really kind of hidden that are still that still have access to us. So, for example, when we were talking about depression, we were talking about some physical aspects of depression. If you're clinically depressed, if you have organic roots that are creating the problem. Something isn't firing right. Our synapses just aren't working properly. There are things like that can create feelings of depression. Same thing with anxiety. If you have problems with your thyroid, a lot of times anxiety is a byproduct of that. Blood pressure, maybe. Racing heartbeat, anything. When something occurs physiologically that creates a response emotionally, and our emotion produces thoughts, That's where a lot of stuff comes from sometimes. And so sometimes, sugar, caffeine. I mean, like you can address some of these physiological responses with medication. You can address it with exercise, proper diet, good sleep patterns, things like that. Going and getting diagnosed or looked at as far as like your physical health. Is there something that's creating this for me? Something that's beyond my ability to control on my own? Then, there's a good chance there may be a need for intervention. And the thing is if that's the case, that's kind of good news, really, because if that's the case, that means that it can be addressed pretty easily. But it kind of comes through the back door, It's not like something that we're like, it's not in the forefront. It's not something that we're just allowing on our own, but it's something that occurs as a result of something physiologically or maybe, genetically or whatever. And, so if you're struggling, with anxiety, or you might want to go and get checked out and say, hey, is there anything physiologically that could possibly be causing this? I know at times, one time I was on some pain meds. It was actually tramadol, and I got lower back pain and neck pain. And the doctor put me on this tramadol, and she said, "Oh, it's not an opiate and it's not addictive." Wrong. Tramadol is very addictive. Let me tell you, I know for a fact, and because the withdrawals. I mean, I was a heroin addict at one time, and I'm going to tell you, the withdrawals from tramadol was much worse, in my opinion, than when I went cold turkey off of heroin when I was 29 years old. I mean, it lasted for weeks, and it really, really messed with my head. And but that tramadol, in between doses. Sometimes if I didn't take a strong enough dose the day before, which I never abused it. As a matter of fact, I took less than what they told me to take. And, but the thing is that, like it would be, my body would be wanting more of that. And sometimes I would sleep at night, and that the effects of that tramadol would create an anxious feeling in my body. And the next thing I know, I'm dreaming dreams that are concerning, like anxiety producing dreams, right? I'll just say that. And waking up with anxiety, my heart beating and feeling nervous and stuff. And thinking, and my first thought is, man, I gotta go take a pill. I mean, it was horrible. I did not like it whatsoever. And but it was being produced by the anxiousness that my body was responding to. And so like it created the thoughts, which created the emotions, which created the behavior. See? And so, and then I thought about, the front door. The front door, it's pretty obvious. Front door is pretty prominent. You know what I mean? It's like, if I open my front door and let something in, I mean, I am inviting that to come in. Okay? You keep your door locked unless you want something in there. And so like when we think about anxiety or even depression, for example, but especially anxiety, because that's what we're talking about, the front door is things that I am willingly allowing to occur. Okay. And so, this could be things that I'm presenting in front of myself, the news, politics, things that I am, I'm allowing myself, I'm drinking, 15 cups of coffee, don't think that you're going to drink that much caffeine and not have some sort of a reaction. I love coffee, man, I love coffee, but I have 2 cups in the morning and usually 1 in the afternoon sometime. But if I was to drink 5 cups of coffee in the morning, I'm going to be buzzed up like I'll get out. Well, those feelings in my body are going to produce some thoughts. It's going to produce some feelings, anxiety to a certain extent. And, so things that I'm purposely allowing to take place, watching movies that are, dark or threatening, or, keeping your mind, in a state of hypertension, things that you allow yourself to do or see, or people that you allow yourself to be around that produces anxiety. When you're around some people who are always going to make you feel less than, or put you on edge, or that if you say anything, it's going to be taken the wrong way, it can produce anxiety, right? And, so there are certain things that we can look at in our life and say, great thing to get your journal out, is, front door, back door. Front door, back door. What's going on? Where are the things coming from in my life that could be producing some uneasy feelings for me? And then I thought about the windows. The windows, those are where people, that now we're talking about things that creep in, creep in. I think about what Jesus said. He said, the thief doesn't come in through the gate at the sheepfold. He crawls over the wall, And so, the little creepy crawlers that produce the anxiety in your life, right? So, those could be things like, I don't know, little sidebars, things that we really, we're not willingly doing, but they just, are just leering in outside our windows. Finances, for example, bills. Future things about the future that we haven't really worked out yet. Little concerns and worries that probably are never going to happen, but they're out there. Retirement, and the marital health of our children, or the physical health of our grandchildren. When there's nothing going on with them right now, but we start thinking about things that could happen. Am I ever going to get my house paid off? What if my house burned down? Do I have enough insurance? There's just so many things. These are just examples. But there are so many things that are just like leering out of our windows there, and just waiting for us to just crack it a little bit and just let that stuff creep in. And if we're not careful, we start ruminating on stuff that really, really, really does not need to be thinking about. And so you say, well, okay, well, what are some things that I can do? There are some things you can do, okay? First of all, we're talking about our thinking, right? So, I can't stress physical exercise enough. Okay, physical exercise will really get the cobwebs out. Not everybody's a morning person. Okay, I am a morning person. I'm doing an extra job now where I help out at a resort there. My son-in-law and daughter own, and this year I decided I was going to do the breakfast buffet on Saturday morning, right? So breakfast buffet starts at 7:00. It's pretty early. You got to cook enough food for maybe, I don't know, several hundred people. It just depends on how many people show up. And so anyway, it takes a couple of hours to get all that food together. But what time am I getting? I'm getting up at 3:45, even though I don't need to be there till 5. Why? Because, I got to have coffee. I got to sit there and get my mind straight. And, so I'm a morning person. Not everybody's a morning person. But what I'm saying is that, if morning time is a great time to work out the cobwebs, and physical exercise is a great way to do it. I'll tell you what I love doing. I get on my exercise bike, and have been now for a little while, 30 minutes every day. After I've already read my Bible, I've already had a devotion, I've had 2 cups of coffee. Before I take my shower, I get on my exercise bike for 30 minutes. I put on some worship music, and I start praying. And man, not only am I exercising my body, but I am spending 30 minutes in prayer every morning. I got 30 minutes to set aside Will God hear your prayer while you're pumping an exercise bike? He sure will. Man, I'm telling you what, there's some mornings that I'm speaking in tongues. I've got my hands raised. I mean, I am getting blessed by the Holy Ghost, like all the way down to my little tennis shoes. And God will meet you right where you're at. It's a great time for me. And by the time I get done with the exercise and the prayer, man, my mind is pretty much straight. I mean, I've already, any concerns or cares that I've had, I've given it over to the Lord, and I am ready for the day. And so, just having a good routine like that really helps a lot. Not every thought deserves our attention. Can we take time to examine what our thoughts are and whether they actually deserve our attention? Do you get junk mail? I do. If I go to the post office, most of the mail I get is junk mail. And, I stand at the post office and throw the mail in the trash because I'm not taking it home with me. I don't need another circular. I don't need another brochure. I don't need another credit card application. I got plenty of credit cards. And so, those things are like junk mail, man. Does every thought deserve my attention? I'm not even opening that envelope. I'm not even going there. I don't have time for that. I got more important things in my life than sit around and read about junk mail. And so, negative thoughts that are not producing positive feelings and things that build me up mentally, spiritually, physically, etc., that really doesn't deserve my attention. Okay? And so not every thought deserves anything. When we start thinking about things that are, man, I just wonder if anybody actually loves me. Are you kidding me? I wonder if anybody at my church actually cares about me. Really? Are you going to sit around and think that? Really? Does my pastor actually know that I exist? Maybe you go to a big old church and he doesn't know you exist. That's why they have small groups. That's why you make relationships with friends. Whatever. Don't sit around and try to think of things that's going to create anxiety or depression in your life. Okay, so another thing is we can examine each thought. Ask yourself some questions. If there are thoughts that are pervasive to you, that occur on a frequent basis, okay, then ask yourself a couple of questions. First of all, is this thought true? Is it true? Most of the time it's not, okay? Is it true? Is it just something that I'm thinking, or is this really true? The second thought is it completely true? There's a difference. Because sometimes we have some truth involved, but it's not completely true. Yeah, Sister so-and-so didn't really shake my hand. But does that mean she doesn't like me? Or maybe she was just busy that day or whatever. There's a crazy pastoral illustration right there, right? But you know what I'm saying, right? Just because something happened, yeah, that happened, but what's really behind that? Are we really being truthful? Do we really know the truth? Are we incorporating irrational beliefs like fortune telling or mind reading? Those are irrational. We don't have the power to do that, okay? What evidence supports it or contradicts it? Oh, I got so much stuff. I'm going to come back next time, and we're going to kind of pick up where I left off right here because I'm out of time. But I hope that you're enjoying this. And if you know somebody who's struggling with some negative thinking, anxiety, depression, stress, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff in this series, Hope for the Troubled Mind, because I believe that there is hope for the troubled mind. And I believe that hope lies in God, but it also lies in a lot of the choices that we make. So I look forward to seeing you next time. God bless you. Bye-bye.